Now in this lecture, we're gonna look at these couple of things. That is how to send requests, how to create environments, how to create environment variables, right? And how to use those variables, how to assert the status code of any response, how to create variables at the runtime, and then how to run the entire collections, right? So before that, in the previous session, we started hitting one of the API, a sample API, that is request response.in. So if in case you go to this website, just give me a moment. So just type request response.in, and this is a very basic website. Which contains a very basic API that you can hit, or what you can do. If you want, you can use this API. This is a sample API that I have actually developed. Now, if I show you the look and feel of this API, what you need to do is you need to go to the location from command prompt. So open it from command prompt and type java-jar, and you need to give the jar file name, right? So now in order to run these commands, you need to make sure that you have Java installed on your machine, right? So you need to have the JDK, at least the version 1.8 should be installed on your machine. Now, how to install Java on Windows or on Mac, I'm gonna cover in the next lecture to our current lecture, right? So if you want to configure Java, you can do it in the same way, and this command will work absolutely fine on Mac as well as on Windows, right? So if I press enter, so this will gonna start the services. This is basically this REST API. It's actually designed using Spring Boot, right, and the Swagger API. So although you need not to worry about how this is being developed, because in this course we are talking about the testing part of REST APIs specifically. So once this is started, you'll see a message JVM running, and you'll go over here and you can access this API from localhost colon 8080, and this is swagger UI.html. So this is the path of this API. So this is how this API looks like. You'll go to user control, you'll see a lot of things over here, like these are all the methods that you can access. You can send a GET request, a POST request, a PUT request, then you can get a particular, let's say we are taking a resource as users. So we can pass on the user ID and get a particular user. We can delete a user. We can patch a user, right? So these are a couple of most commonly used methods, right? And it's a very simple API for practice. Once you are familiar, once you are able to do all these action, you'll be very much familiar with the API part, right? How REST API they actually works, right? But this is just for the practice purpose. We're gonna look at very real-time APIs as well, some complex APIs as well, right? So now if I talk about get, so get will actually gonna get me list of all the users. See, you can try it out over here as well. So you can send the request through this UI as well. If you click on try it out and click on execute, it will print you the response body. The data is in a form of a JSON along with the response code, that is 200, that is okay, right? And these are the list of 10 users which are added, and you can see the request URL is this, in which the base URI is this, base path is API, and the resource or the endpoint is users, right? So you can take this and you can put it in your Postman, and you can try sending one GET request. So what I'll do, I'll create one more collection and name it as way to automation REST API, right? And in this I am going to create a request, let's say get users, right? And I'll save it. So in this request I am going to pass this in the response this in the URI part over here after selecting the method as get, and then we're gonna click on send, which will give us the result over here, the response over here, right? So this is like 200 status 200 okay, right, which is the response. It's correct. Now in the same way, if I try to hit another try to send in another API request for creating a user, so that is like a post request, and this is the endpoint. So here in the method body we need to pass the parameter content type as application JSON, right? So this is the string that we need to pass while we are creating a new user. And how you're going to pass it, first you go to postman and create a new request. So I'll create you can add a request from here as well, or you can simply click over here and create a new request, but make sure you save this request and give the name as, let's say, create user, and save it to your current collection, right? And then now for creating the method type is post, so paste this URI over here. So URI is your this API users, and prior to that let's see if it is available over here. Not, then you just need to copy this the base URI and then the endpoint. So that is API and users, right? And then in the response in the request body over here, what you need to do, you need to select raw and you need to pass on this JSON data over here, right? Here you need to pass the ID, because ID is auto incremented, right? So email, I gonna write some email, let's say corporate at way2automation.com. Then the first name I'll gonna write is Ricky, the last name as Roy, right? And then we need to select the content type. So content type, either you can select it from here, so you can send it in a form of a plain text or XML. Right now you're sending it in a form of a JSON, so you need to select JSON from here. And always remember that the content type that you're providing will always be sent in the form of headers. So if I have selected JSON from here, you will gonna see in the header, so content type is application JSON. So instead of like passing it over here, if I simply say text over here, I can go to header and I can define this value over here on my own as well. So I can say content type to application JSON. I can select it from here as well, and same will be selected over here. In case you want to select it as XML, then you're gonna say application XML, and over here you're gonna see XML is selected, right? And if you change it from here, then the same will be updated in the headers. So content types are always sent in a form of a header, right? And this is the JSON part that we have provided over here in the body. So if I send this post request right now, let's see what response we're gonna see. We got 201 created, and the response we don't see anything in the body right now because it has actually created a user. But now if I go to this get request and send this request again, you're gonna see a user with the ID 11 has already been created, right? If you go back to your UI, then you can see while getting the user, if when we were executing it, then there were only 10 users, right? Now if I execute it again, you're gonna see the 11th user is created over here, right? So this is how we have seen how to send a get request to get the list of users, and how to create a new user with the help of the post method. Now same way I can add one more request from here, and give it a request name. Let's say what next I want to do is I want to get the data for one particular user, right? So here we need to provide the user ID, right? So you'll get you just need to copy this endpoint, and you need to provide the user ID. So what I'll do, I'll again say get single user information, save. Okay, this is also showing as get. You can see the method types over here. So I think this is not yet saved. So now this changes to post, right? And this is the get request. So again, I need to pass on the URI over here, right? This is again going to be a get request, and then we need to pass on the user ID. So the recent user that we have created is the 11th user, right? So if I click on send, we're gonna see the response over here in the JSON body, and this is for the 11th user that we have actually created with the status code 200. Okay, now with different requests we are actually getting the different response codes. For this we got 201, for this we got 200, for this we got 200 as well, right? So here as well the response code was 200. If I send it, the response code should be 200. Give me a moment. Somehow it is maximized. So yeah, over here the response code is 200, right? So there are n number of response codes that we'll be looking at it very soon. In some time you'll be able to understand why these response codes are there, and like what is the meaning of 200, or what is the meaning of 200. One, at times we get response codes starting with 400 or 500. So most of the time those are reporting errors or failures in our script that we have executed, right? So in some time it will be very much clear to you, right? So but in this lecture what we have seen is how we have passed a get request to get the data of all the users. Then we have created a new user, and then we have fetched the information of one single user. So these informations are actually coming from the database, right? But you need not to worry about like where the database is, because everything will be mentioned in the API documentation. All right.